Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are thrilled to have you with us, as always. Super excited to be doing this show this season, talking about busyness, self-worth, how it all works together, how we can feel worthy without all the busyness in our lives. And today we have a special episode for you that I personally am very excited about. I know Tova is as well. We have a special guest for you, and it's not an interview. It's an extra host on the show. And so I'm very excited about that. We're going to see how it goes with all three of us talking, because you know how Tova and I love to talk. So I don't know. It's going to be exciting. But today we are going to talk about comparisons and how that plays into this whole busyness, self-worth loop that plays in our lives. So before we get into all of that, let me welcome, how do I do this? Let me first welcome my super fantastical, wonderful, amazing co-host, Tova, and then I'll let her welcome our super fantastical, amazing, wonderful other co-host to the show. So Tova, first, let me ask, how are you doing today? How are things going?
Well, it is, it appears to be a good day. Though the weather is nice. It is sunny. It's not too hot. I have a feeling of ennui. I don't know if that's real or if it's something from just Gilmore Girls that I've made up and gone with, but it is, we are supposed to be, you and I are supposed to be talking to our guest in a hotel room together.
Yes.
In Connecticut. And we were supposed to be on this big retreat weekend of ours and, setting big goals and sitting by, doing it while at the pool.
Right.
And instead, COVID is here forever.
Forever. It's never leaving.
And so I am feeling a little blue about that. But I am not blue at this exact moment because I'm so excited. You may remember her from our very first guest when we started doing it. And we had so much fun talking to, I'm going to say your name. I keep saying her, Boonmi. We had so much fun talking to you. And then since then, of course, we enjoy you in just life in general. And so we were like, we have to have you on so you can give us more wisdom and talk to us about these things. And so welcome, Boonmi. How are you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am so glad to be here. And thank you for inviting me back. I had such a great time the last time. I think I feel like I had a really short time span for us to talk the last time. And when it was over, I was like, I could have talked for like another hour. And so when Tova reached out to me, I was like, yeah, of course. But no, I am good. I am good. Yeah. Okay. It's raining. It's been raining all day here. And it's kind of like dull and gray and just, you know what I mean? Like the weather is kind of icky. And I've been sorting through a number of big feelings the past few days. So, I've been kind of in that, I'm sitting in some big feelings phase, which can be like, interesting work, but that's what we have to do. We just have to sit in it and sort it. But in this moment, I'm good. I'm excited to be talking to you both. And this is like, worthiness is one of my favorite things to talk about because I just recently discovered it. And when you first discover something, you're like, ooh, And not, let me clarify, not that I recently discovered my self-worthiness, but just recently discovered in the past 2 years, examining things from a frame of worthiness.
Yep.
And that changes everything. And so it's like this new thing. I'm like, ooh. So I'm excited to talk about that.
It's such an interesting perspective to bring to all of these different conversations, right? To like flip the whole conversation of how you're in the framework at which you're looking at things. And it's interesting that you say this week you're like in some big feel, or maybe you just said today, not this week. So, and I'm projecting. It's totally possible. I did warn you guys that I was going to have my soapbox moment. So here it is. I feel like, so I'm the reason that Tova and I, well, not I, like COVID is the reason that Tova and I are not on our retreat this weekend. And it's, COVID struck my family, and I am super unbelievably fortunate that it struck now and not like way back at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I'm unbelievably fortunate that I have amazing healthcare. And I just am steeped in privilege, right? Like I'm fully aware of that. So lucky that this is my situation right now. And I've sat in the last week or so of this experience and gone and felt like 3 years worth of feelings that I have been that I had not realized I was denying myself. And that's such an interesting experience to have had, because we spend so much time, and I'm going to get to our topic today. I promise I'll get off my soapbox, but I had spent so much time, and Tova and I spend so much time, and Bunmi, I know you think about this as well, that I spend so much time talking about feeling your feelings and like experiencing the feelings and, letting yourself have those moments when you need to have them. And I really, I remember at the very beginning of COVID being very afraid and being worried because, there are several people in my life who are compromised. And, I have some medical PTSD because of the things that they've been through. And these are the kind of people in your life who, like, if they stop breathing, a big part of you stops breathing. Mm-hmm. And so to then just sort of go through the last 3 years and just deny those feelings because you go into survival mode. And then the last week I realized I was like, oh, I'm going to now feel all those feelings and I'm going to do it in a week. And it's like, oh, great. So this soapbox moment is a PSA to all of you that like, we all have to allow ourselves to experience the feelings when we're ready to feel them. Even someone who has spent, such as myself, who has spent a great deal of time working through this process and who has, has a degree in psychology, who has had years of therapy, who thought they were like, oh yeah, cool, I've got this. And then was like, oh, wait a minute. No, I don't. It can smack you in the face and go, oh, you really haven't processed a lot of these feelings. And then now you're going to sit here and you're going to address them and you're going to start dealing with them. And so there's no shame in that, or there's no reason to feel guilt or beat yourself up, or, because I realized I was starting to do that and going down that path. And so maybe that's my soapbox moment for today, is like, I'm really sad and disappointed and bummed that I'm not on my like fantastic retreat with one of my best friends and off, enjoying my free time away from my kids and doing, drinking fruity cocktails or whatever. But I'm also self-aware enough to notice that like, I really needed to do this process and I needed to experience these feelings and I needed to do this, and it will help me help other people and it will help me bring that experience to other people as well. Also, what incredible fortune I have to have gone this long without having anybody in my family to have had COVID or to have gone through this, and that everybody is well and getting through it and all those things. So putting that gratitude back out into the universe that we're living through this and being okay, and the empathy out to other people who went through this alone, and that we really, as a community and culture, need to do better and better for the people who are suffering and struggling. And so that's my soapbox moment, and I will move on from that. Well, and on to
I want to add before we move on. So I want to add to a few things that you said, which I do the exact same thing. And I suspect a lot of people who are self-aware and who have done the work, are doing this hard internal work. I suspect that a lot of people who fall into that category do the same thing. And that is when something happens, right? Hey, look, daggone it, I know better. Like I do, like like, I know this, you know, and I know enough to sit in my feelings and feel my feelings. I know enough to process, and it looks like I haven't been doing, and I know better. And I love Pima Children. Tova already knows. And in her book, Taking the Leap, there's a passage in there that I read that like stopped me in my tracks. And I'm actually kind of mad I didn't bring it down here with me. And she says, well, I think she was quoting somebody else, but the message of it is, for those of us who fall into that category, why don't we, instead of beating ourselves up, however little or largely, like maybe it's just a little bit beat up or large beat up, why don't we instead celebrate that self-awareness, right? The fact that we've done this, and instead of going like, oh, I should have known better, and instead of doing that, go like, wow, I'm so glad I recognize that this is happening, you know, that it's a thing to actually be celebrated. And so when I read, I was like, whoa, yo, okay, you know, and then just that little shift has been, and it's all part of giving ourselves grace, right? And that little shift has helped me so much, because I'm quick to go like, how did I get hooked and let myself be carried on this like ridiculous journey, you know, emotional journey, and then just going like, the fact that I even recognize that I'm hooked, that is a big deal. And then just, so anyway, I wanted to, you know, latch onto that part of what you said really quickly and just offer that.
Well, and I think actually what we're talking about is on topic for what we're talking about today, because we're not just talking about comparisons like scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, which I will admit, when my anxiety is extra high, somehow that leads me to spend more time on Facebook and then feel worse. And I'm like, what is happening? Yes. But it's part of my, you know, with my anxiety, I have trouble focusing on things. And so getting into a social media scroll is so easy. But we're also talking about comparing ourselves to who we think we should be or how we think we should behave, not necessarily to another person directly, but like this idealized version or this person that we think we should be. And so I think that happens a lot, especially to people who are self-aware, like the example you gave, Boonmi, where it's like, no, you're aware that other people would just be drifting around, not knowing what's going on. But on a lighter note, there was a meme or something, a quote, I don't know what it was, but I'm a big Marvel fan, or I have become in the last couple of years. And I know there was this joke, because at the end of kind of the bunch of the Avengers movies, there's like a 5-year blip where like 5 years went away. And someone's like, haha, like no one would just pretend that never happened and expect everyone to go about their business as usual. And then it was like looking around as we live through this like not post-pandemic, because it'll never end, pandemic experience, where it's like, oh no, that's exactly what they expect of us, is to just go on like nothing just happened. Like, and it was like there was this catastrophic event in the movies, and at first it did seem like nothing would happen, and now pretty much every other movie is like dealing with the fallout of that experience, whereas we are just expected to live normal lives where we just went through something incredibly traumatic. And yet it's not totally gone. And I mean, an older person just passed away in my town from COVID, like last week. Now they were they were getting up there in years. I don't know if they had like comorbidities, but it doesn't matter. It was another person. And so it's a very weird place we're in. And I know we talked a little bit about this last week, but I think we're all going to have to navigate. I've realized I have this, I have anxiety. It's just part of my personality, but then I also have like what I'm considering to be like actual anxiety as to the direction of like our country. And that is like, and it's real and it's not. And I think this recent Supreme Court decision, it has been something I have feared for 20 years. And I've been basically told like, it's never going to happen. You're being hysterical. And now that it happened, I'm like, well, these are my big fears. And I'm not going to listen to people who say I'm being hysterical anymore, because the thing that you just told me was never going to happen. So it's like, how do we live and live a life full of gratitude and joy, and more importantly, peace, when there's like legit things to be anxious about, like big things to be anxious about? I don't know the answer. I'm asking the question. We don't have to answer it today. It's a big question. We can go to our topic. But I think that figuring out how to have our feelings and also exist it's a hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably an entire podcast season.
Yeah.
Maybe we just figured out season 7.
Yeah, potentially season 7. I hope somebody is taking notes for us somewhere. Unfortunately, we're recording, so. But
Yeah.
no, I agree. It's a lot. We've been through a lot, and the reality is we've been going through a lot for a long time, like centuries, right? Just as human beings, as women, as all kinds of things, and lots of those feelings have been swept under the rug. We have been told repeatedly that what we feel is not true, what we think is not accurate, what we see is not actually there. And so dealing with that reality, or lack of reality, I guess, is a whole huge topic. And it's something that I think really messes with your feelings of self-worth. And I am bringing this full circle, right? Because if you're consistently told that what you know is real and is true and is accurate is not, which is obviously the definition of gaslighting, then how do you know who you are, right? Because your whole reality around you is getting warped, is getting messed with by the people you're supposed to be able to trust, the people most likely, right? Like, even if they're not people, even if they're just strangers, the people in your reality are telling you your reality is not real. Like, that's that's a confusing sentence, but it's a confusing life to live. And so how do you even hold on to your self-worth in that environment? And that's, people can say whatever they want to say to me. That is what women have been dealing with forever. And that's what minorities have been dealing with forever. That's what women have been dealing with forever. And that reality sucks. And so having to navigate that, having to try and function in a world where that is what's happening to you and hold on to your self-worth, I don't know. Obviously, I'm very salty this week, but like, that is very hard to navigate. And it brings us full circle to this concept of comparisons and what we meant to talk about today, that I completely derailed because, again, I'm real salty. And I say it every week, so maybe I just apparently like salty these last few months. I'm working on it.
I think that's something that, like, to have a conversation about is like, when we're in a constant state of saltiness, like, what do we do?
I don't know. Somebody needs to bring me some ice cream stat. I don't know. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna get into the meat of this topic. We're going to talk about what we mean when we say, when we say comparisons to ourselves, when we say comparisons to other people, and then we're going to get into the weeds of the topic. But let's take a quick break, reset, and we'll be right back. Hey, Tova, you know what I love?
Coffee. Definitions, uninterrupted reading time.
Okay, all of those things are true, but I also love maps.
As in Siri, take me to the beach?
Yeah, also as in who am I really and who do I want to be?
Yeah, I figured that's what you meant, but I also have the beach on my mind, so...
Well, we were talking about things we love, so that definitely makes sense. But the map I was thinking about is our Defining You course.
Yes. We put together Defining You as a way to map where you are and how you want to live your life.
So true. So many people struggle to find their purpose in a busy and noisy world.
That's why we made Defining You, our course meant to guide you to creating your own mission statement.
And there's good news. You can get it now on teachable.com. Find the link on our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/courses, or check out the link on our Instagram bio at goboldlytogether.
We can't wait to see you there. Now, let's head back to the show.
All right, everybody, we are back. And as promised, we are going to get into, for lack of a better word, the weeds of the topic, corporate speak. And like I said before the break, we're talking today about what do we mean when we say we're comparing ourselves to ourselves? And what do we mean when we say we're comparing ourselves to other people? I think comparing ourselves to other people is pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to let someone else tackle that in a second. But what I really find interesting and fascinating, and what Tova and I, the reason this episode even came about is we were talking about comparing ourselves to ourselves because we had this, I don't know, Tova, we had this whole long conversation about how, what happens when you like hit a milestone, right? You turn 35, you turn 40, you turn 45, and you look around and you're like, oh no, sorry, I had to censor myself. Oh no, I was supposed to have a Mercedes. I was supposed to have a McMansion. I was supposed to be a CEO. I was supposed to have launched, a book. I don't know, whatever it is that you thought you were supposed to have done by then. And you're comparing where you are to where you thought you would be. I was supposed to have 2 kids. I was supposed to be married. I was supposed to have made my dad proud. And I never will. Like whatever it is that you thought you were supposed to do, and you're shocked and appalled that it hasn't happened, right? That's the kind of, I think, really insidious comparison game that a lot of us get sucked into. And it does circle back to that whole gaslighting conversation that I think is really troublesome. And I'm gonna let somebody else talk because I've been talking a lot.
I think it was just Viola Davis just like 2 days ago or yesterday posted on Instagram about like, what does it look like to gaslight yourself?
Yes, she did.
And,
She
right?
did.
Right. Okay. You saw that too.
Yeah. No,
Go
it was
check
a
it
great
out.
post.
That's what does it look like to gaslight yourself?
Yes. It like,
whoa,
my brain blew up.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Okay. I haven't seen that.
We will share it. I'm not going to look at it now because I'll just read it, but I will say that, many of like I went through a divorce not that long ago, and there are a lot of feelings that go along with that, and a lot of grief, and there's just a lot of feelings. That's more than one season, but one of the overwhelming feelings is this wasn't supposed to happen. Like, this isn't what's supposed to happen. And Riley knows, and my therapist knows, that one of the biggest struggles I continue to have on a daily basis, weekly basis, and I actually just shared it. Someone just posted on a group, and I shared with the group, I guess, in my comment, because I had to share everything all the time to anyone, that, I struggle with parenting and being the mom that I want to be because I carry so much like guilt and shame that like this isn't the life that I wanted for them. And yet it's a good life, right? These are not necessarily rational thoughts, because you get the life that you get, and life throws curveballs at you, and things happen. But when I have those extra big feelings, that's when I'm like, I need to do more meditating. I need a journal, because I can't be the mom that I want to be when I have those feelings, because the guilt makes me irritated and frustrated, and my fuse gets shorter. And a lot of that has to do with letting go and turning things over to the universe and forgiveness. But all of that is really hard. And so it's going to take a long time of working. But I think that, whether it's, I should have had this job sooner, I should have been somewhere else sooner, I should have done this sooner, why did it take me so long to figure this out? All of those feelings are so hard. And they're hard because, yes, we can talk about the influence of the outside society on like screaming at you and telling you things, but it's coming from within. And that's, you can't turn off Instagram and walk away from what's coming from within.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that inner voice is so powerful. Like it's so, because you, and the other thing, you're the only one who hears it, which
yes.
which gives it even more power. But as I was prepping for this, and I was reading, the notes, the quote that, again, another Pima Children quote that I was trying to print earlier on is like so spot on. And this quote like really literally shifted my perspective, I think like 6-7 years ago. And what happened during that time? And so I used to run, right? I love to run. It's my thing, it's how I de-stress. And I have 3 kids who are 2 years apart. And like when they were young, now they're older, but when they were younger, it was just a lot. And running was just my time. And I was training for a half marathon, and I injured my knees, right? And so for like 2 years, as part of that recovery, I tried so hard to get back in the gym and get back into it. But just physiologically, the way my feet and my knees are built, they're just not made for running. And it just took me, so I was like, now that I look back, probably depressed about it, and trying to get in the gym and be that person and do those things, and comparing myself to the old athletic me. And then I ran into this quote, Tracy Ellis Ross was in an interview, and she said this quote, and my brain like blew up. And I'm going to read it. And it's by Pima Children, and he says, right now, I'm going to cry, Jesus. Hang on it. I haven't even started reading the thing.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You're like
the best.
me. Whenever I read a children's book with my boys, if it's like touching, I'll be like 2 pages and they'll be like, Mom, are you crying already?
I'm like, come on, get it together. Okay, it says, right now, can you make an unconditional relationship with yourself? Just at the height you are, the weight you are, with the intelligence you have, and your current burden of pain. Can you enter into a relationship with that? Like, so can you make this unconditional relationship to love who you are right now, in this moment, with all your yuck and with all of it? Like, can you say to that person, I love you unconditionally? And that's the work. That's the work, to get to that point where you can say to that person in this very moment, no matter, because we're all like, we're not perfect. We all go through, life is so messy. And so that's the constant work. And so in that moment, comparing, I'm like, okay, I have to adjust to this new me, like the present me. How do I accept that? How do I love on that? And what tools do I need to move forward with who the present Bumi is? And so that's all part, like, now pulling it into the bigger picture of compare. We do that a lot because we have moments, because we're like in our 40s. I'm 44, and I'm assuming you all are plus or minus 5-10 years.
Yeah,
very close.
And so we've had a long life, and in that life there are highs and lows and highs, and it's so easy to look back on the highs, and compare our current state with those highs. It's like, everybody says, don't compare your life to somebody else's highlight reel. Well, don't compare your life to your highlight reel.
Exactly.
Right?
That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's easy to compare those two things, and because nobody wants to like really dwell and remember all the hard times. You don't that doesn't give you those endorphins and that happy chemicals, was it dopamine in your body, like who wants to think about the worst times on their life and just sit in there? Nobody, but it's the best times of your life that, gives you that happy feeling. So it's only natural that you compare to that. And then you say, oh, or even when you're dreaming, when you're thinking, okay, this is the job that I want, or this is where I would like to be in like 5 years. And you think of, nobody's sitting here dreaming of like crappy stuff that they want to do, and
Right,
so
yeah. You're not thinking of the worst thing that you could possibly.
Yeah. naturally you're going to think and dream these amazing things for yourself, and it brings that happy feeling. So when you start comparing, you're going to naturally compare to moments that make you happy. And so I think just, it's for me, it's looking at things more holistically and recognizing that, okay, this is what I'm doing, and sitting in it, why am I doing this? And just processing that feeling, because it's going to happen. I am going to compare myself to myself again. It is going to happen. But then when it happens, what do I do with it?
Well, and I think something you said is so important, because I was sitting here and I was listening, and like, this is I am in one of the high moments of my life. I love my apartment. I like my job. I love the company we're building. Like I am in a high moment. I am in a high moment. And yet I have all of these other feelings that creep up. And so when you just said the way you feel, I think it's so important. And I was just having this conversation with my oldest son. Our feelings are all real, and we need to feel them and experience them, but they are not facts. And so, and I, somebody else has said that before me, and somebody will say it again, but I think it's so important to remember that while our feelings are real and they deserve to be validated and heard and felt, they're not always telling you the truth, and they're not always facts. And so it is important to remember that as you're feeling feelings. And it's also important to remember that I think sometimes we see it with our kids, right? Like they'll get, like Riley and I were just talking about this, they'll get upset about something and you're like, that's not what you're really upset about. And I think sometimes that happens to us. It also happens that if we are feeling blue about just the world or anxious, that then we start interpreting feelings and facts through like a lens that helps distort them. And so I think that it is extra important that we take care of ourselves and we give ourselves that grace that you were talking about, because even in our best moments, we are sometimes lying to ourselves and our feelings are not telling the truth.
Well, and I think feelings are never telling the whole picture, right? Yeah. Like whatever feeling you might have at any given moment is fleeting. There is no, it's just not forever. We don't ever, your feelings never going to last forever. They change. They're constantly changing. And we talk about this all the time because everybody hates it, right? People want consistency. They want things to stay the same. And that's just not reality. And as frustrating as that may be, whatever you feel today is probably not what you're going to feel tomorrow. And so the truth of that is that those feelings are going to change over time, and they're going to be different from day to day. And they're always going to be like a little bit of a liar. That's okay. Like you can accept that if you can allow for yourself to have the room to grow and change over time, it'll be okay, right? You can be happy and sad at the same time. You can be, like you were talking about, Tova, you can be happy that you have the apartment that you love and sad that you don't have the house that you want. You can be both, and that's acceptable. Like there's nothing wrong with having both of those feelings at the same exact moment, and neither of them are lying to you and both of them are lying to you, right? Like it's the catch-22 of being human. Like feelings don't always make sense, and it is what it is. Like we can't change that. All we can do is sort of ride the wave of it happening and go, okay, well, this is how I'm feeling now, and that does not define who I am as a human. It defines this moment of my experience of humanity, and that's a very different thing. Who you are as a human are your core values. And that's something we've talked about at length. Who you are as a human is very different from what you feel in your humanity. And, it's kind of like when you were talking about, like, can I accept this body, this space that I am right now? I don't even know if it's accepting the body. You're accepting the soul, right? Can I accept my soul? Because your body's going to change. What your body is today is going to be different in 10 years and 10 years later and 10 years later. But your soul is your soul. Can I accept my soul? Can I accept my spirit? Can I accept my personhood? That's the acceptance we need to do. because the body will keep changing and it will fail us and it will rise us up and it will birth children or it will do whatever it's going to do all around us. But your soul, your spirit, that's not going to change. That is what it is. And can you accept that? If you can accept that, then everything that changes around it doesn't really matter. And that, if you can make that happen for you, which I have not yet done, just to be perfectly clear, if you can make that happen for you, then I mean, that's limitless. That would be, that's what I'm working towards. Because what a glorious glimpse of freedom that would be, right? Like that would just be, I don't know.
And it's constant work. Like,
yes,
I don't think
yes.
you ever get to a point of full acceptance.
Right.
It's because, we're constantly changing and we're constantly growing. And so I think as part of that journey on this journey of acceptance is being present, being present in the moment and just being fully aware and stay on that journey to learn more about who you are and what is it that makes you feel this way or react this way. And that's all part of this journey, because I don't think we ever get to the point, where we fully accept who we are, because we're constantly learning the new parts of who we are.
Yeah. Right. And growing, expanding, and all of those things. Yeah.
And I think, an important part of acceptance that comes and goes is feeling who you are, knowing who you are, feeling the feelings, and doing it with, if we kind of change it's not really changing the meaning of acceptance, but when we've talked about accepting yourself, accepting that like, this is the way things are at this moment, is doing it without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's one thing to feel your feelings, let them pass through you, know that they're temporal. And it's another thing to feel them without judgment, because I think we are hard on ourselves. Like, when you say like, why did I get hooked into that? Why did that suck me back in? Or, Riley, why haven't I been feeling these feelings for the last 3 years?
Yeah, for sure.
Why were they in that little box for so long?
I know exactly why I haven't. I was just like, oh, whoops.
Yep. And just like being able to experience ourselves without judgment.
Yeah.
And it is not easy. And, what happens when we, compare ourselves, of course, to other people as well. That's not, there is a fine line between being motivated by someone else and then judging yourself based on how you compare to that other person.
Yeah. And, I try to make a point when I'm talking about doing that internal work and how it's hard, it's not easy, but I make a point to talk about the peace that comes on the other side of it. Because, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, why would I want to do all that hard work that makes you feel like crap, right? Yeah. But the peace that the peace that comes on the other side of it, it's just so liberating. And so it is work worth doing, knowing yourself, knowing what your triggers are, knowing, why you react to certain things, all that work that you do to learn to know more about yourself brings you a level of peace that I wish for everyone, and so, I just always want to make sure I add that.
Right.
There's a reason you do the work.
Yes. I wish for this level of comfort 20 years ago, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes. Yeah.
I'm just saying. 20, and sorry to everyone who knew me 20 years ago. Like 20 years ago, me would have been much happier had I started this work earlier. But, also so much gratitude that I feel this much better now, having done that kind of work and put in the effort and gone through the mud and the sludge and the painful process of doing it. And still being in it. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. And it's a little easier. Well, sometimes. Yeah.
Well, every now and then it punches you in the face.
I think you do get those moments, those days where you're like, where you are truly at peace.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh, I see. And you're just like, I don't want to go to sleep tonight because I don't know when it's going to wake up like
Right.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
But like where where I know there's certain days where I meditate and it just feels
Yeah.
good. And then I'll be like, oh, I'm going to journal now. And then suddenly, and it's like, oh, and you're like, all right, how do I hold on to this? I'm going to just hold on as tight as I can. We need to take a quick break. And when we come back, maybe we'll talk a little bit about comparing ourselves to other people. I don't know, maybe we won't. I do want to mention just briefly, just as a reminder, when we come back, all the reasons that social media is bad for you. And then we'll talk a little bit about just things that maybe you can do to sort of help yourself if this is a new concept to you, or if it's not, because these are all good things for us to do as well, on how to figuring out your way through feeling these big feelings. So we will take a quick break and we will be right back. Tova here. I'll admit, when I think of a coach, I immediately think knee-high socks, whistles, and clipboards. Is it because I love Ted Lasso?
Maybe. I mean, I think it's a good look for you, if I'm being honest.
Thanks, I think. Anyway, that's not the kind of coaching we want to talk to you all about.
True. We are talking about life and transition coaching, though I do still love a clipboard and a tube sock.
Both Riley and I are lucky to have worked with incredible coaches throughout our lives.
Before that, though, we struggled with where to start, believing in what coaching could really do for us, and, of course, putting ourselves first.
Taking the leap and working with our coaches made all the difference. They gave us direction and support when we needed it most.
Now, we are fortunate enough to be coaches ourselves, and we're excited to pay it forward.
We can help you figure out where to start, create a roadmap, keep you accountable, and get to living your limitless life.
Sounds pretty great. So if you want to figure out your next steps, check out our services at goboldlyinitiative.com/services.
We can't wait to talk to you. Now, back to the show. All right. So welcome back, everyone. I did say briefly, because I think that we all agree that the conversation about comparing ourselves to ourselves is way more interesting. But I did want to I did want to mention the negative impact that social media can have on us. And sometimes we don't even realize it's happening. Now, that being said, I would not be talking to these two wonderful women right now if it weren't for social media. So I am a huge fan of all of the wonderful things that social media can do and how it can bring communities together. And I think all three of us have seen the magic that can happen as a result of social media. So setting that aside, it can also be a place that if you're spending too much time, it can actually lead to like higher levels of depression and anxiety. It can lead to I don't know if self-hate is the best description, but just these really negative feelings that we feel towards ourselves. And so I mentioned that because this might be a sneak peek for our homework, but stepping away from social media, whether you do it one day a week, whether you do it by reducing the amount that you're on, whatever it is, if you're noticing that you feel worse after you get off social media than you did when you got on it, that's just a clue that you're making your life harder for yourself, and you can step away from that. And that's kind of one of the magic things. I'm not particularly good at this, but of stepping away from social media, as it is in your control. And so I think we can go back to talking about what it means to compare ourselves to ourselves. But I did just want to mention that because I think anytime we're talking about comparisons, Boomy, you made the comment about experience, comparing our lives to like the highlight reel of someone else's. And that just gets amplified so much on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Because nobody puts their worst day on social media. I shouldn't say that. Some people put their worst day on social media, but the vast majority of people are putting their absolute like best, most filtered. I mean, I use filters, but like as a graphic artist tool. But people, nobody's putting their worst stuff on Instagram for the most part. So whatever you're seeing, and everyone knows this already, but whatever you're seeing is people's like happy, best vacations, most loving relationships, that's most attention getting sort of stuff. And so if that's what you're comparing your life to, and finding yourself wanting in some way, then I think that's an unrealistic comparison. I think most people would feel that way. But if you're doing that and you're doing it obsessively or you're doing it constantly, then you've got to look at that and go, all right, how often am I doing this? How many times a week am I posting, and then consistently checking to see how many people have liked my post or commented on my post or thought, said something to me about how great my post is. If that's where you're getting your value from, your self-worth from, that's where I think the issues come in. If you're going on Instagram because you see a new mantra every Monday, and it lifts you up, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going because it's the only place you feel value, then there is something wrong with that. So, and then there's variations in between. Obviously, it's not black or white, but I think that's kind of what you're trying to get at, Tova, is there are degrees to which social media can be used to benefit and to burden us.
Yeah. And I think just, I always have to be aware, and I don't know if I said this while we were recording or just before, but like, I always have to be aware of what headspace I'm in when I'm accessing social media, because there can be things that normally I would be celebrating somebody else's successes. And depending on my headspace, and it starts like, well, why can't you do that? Why aren't you doing that? Bunmi's lattes look so pretty. Why don't you go out and have pretty lattes more often? And, like, what and it's and sometimes it is literally as irrational as that, where I'm like, and it's like, well, if you wanted pretty lattes, you could just go out and like, you like to be at home. Like, it's just, so I think and this goes back to that concept of your feelings are real, but they're not always coming through the filter of facts, and they're filtering through your reality. And so I think it's just, I'm not telling anyone to like never go on Facebook and I've cultivated a lovely space on Instagram where it's always like inspirational. And, I love Instagram. It holds me accountable. It's filled with amazing people doing social justice work. I mean, I just love my Instagram feed. But at the same time, if I'm not in the right headspace, anything can be bad. And I think that like life can be harder when you're not in the right headspace. And like social media, it just comes out at you so fast. It's just coming, it's just more, and it's harder to navigate. So yeah, I think it's being aware of how you feel when you put your phone down.
Well, I think this brings us to how to sort of navigate this whole process. But before we go to that, I do want to say one of the things in researching this that I found interesting and rang true for me is when you do focus on other people's achievements all the time, it can cause you to stop focusing on your own achievements and the things that you find interesting in your own life. And you start sort of trying to achieve whatever it is they're achieving. And it's a weird sort of conundrum, right? Because like, then you're starting to try and achieve things that aren't even really interesting to you in this competitive loop. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna, I don't know, I'm going to figure out how to do that braid just as well as she does that braid. But you don't even like to do braids. You're trying to, but you want to do it just as well as this woman does it. Right. Yeah. And you don't even know why you're doing it. You just feel like you have to keep up with this other person. And what you really want to be off doing is, I don't know, hair. I don't know why I'm thinking about hair. I need a haircut. So you want to be off doing, hair color instead or something. I don't know. Yeah. But it does impact where you put your focus. And then you're not doing the things that you love and that you would be good at otherwise. Right. And that other people might look at you and go, oh, wow, she's really good at that. Let's celebrate it. So it takes you off of your own path. And that's what we're all about here, is following your path and what is interesting and inspirational to you. And that's, that's not the point of life. Like, it's not to keep up with somebody else's passion. It's to keep up with yours.
Well, and it's like compare. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Okay. No, it's like comparing the end product of somebody's
Yes.
zone of genius
Yeah.
to your zone of like barely knowing anything. Like
Yes.
you can't compare the end product of somebody's zone of genius to your, it's like Picasso saying, oh my gosh, I wish I could interview like Oprah. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. It just like when you really think about it, like this is and there are just certain things that just come so naturally to some people, you know, like if I see like perfect example, interior decorating. I love a beautifully styled home. I don't enjoy the process of doing it. You know what I mean? And so, and I have this friend, her home is like, oh my gosh, you know, and I'm like, how do you do this? You know? And so it's like comparing something that somebody else has that, and this is just one example of comparison. There are a million others, right? But when it comes to comparing, you know, someone who has a natural gift for something, or someone who has poured hours and hours, like thousands of hours studying something, but you only see the 30-second end product of that, you know, and then you get all envious and think, oh, I wish I could do that. How? You can't, because you don't have that talent.
Well, also,
you haven't studied it. And so just accepting that. But the point I want to make is that feeling is a feeling, and you're going to have more of them. So what do you do with that feeling? Yes, you can sit, and that feeling is energy, you know, and I'm a strong believer in energy flows, because if it doesn't flow, if it sits, it's going to erode, right? And so when you have that feeling, you sit in it, you identify it, but then what do you do with that feeling? You have to move it through your body. And so in my example of my friend, this is a very dear friend. Instead of going like every time I'm like, yo, I am going to go purchase a sectional. I have no idea what I'm doing. Are you free on Saturday? You want to come with me, you know? And and so like, that's just an example. Or I have gotten into the habit. I hope people don't think I'm stalkerish. I've gotten into the habit of sending people, I admire their work, but I don't know them, sending them messages like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. Like move that energy, you know, whether it's that or if it inspires you, but don't be inspired to go and create your own Picasso painting. Know your lane, like, right?
Yes.
Well, I think, I think,
or go take art classes or something.
I love the book, The Year of Yes. It's one that I read almost every year. And
it's right there.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And Shonda Rhimes at one point, so she wrote The Year of Yes. And at one point she met Maya Angelou. And she talked about how she wanted to write like her and be like her. And Maya Angelou was like, I'm so glad that you didn't, because we wouldn't have Grey's Anatomy. Right. And I think sometimes when we are chasing after someone else's goals or comparing, like if we are too caught up in, well, they're talented and gifted and I'm not, then we're not spending time finding our own gifts and growing our own talent and chasing after our own goals. And aren't we glad that as someone who loves Shondaland and all that she brings into the world, like, I'm so glad she stopped trying to be Maya Angelou, because we could use another Maya Angelou, but like it'll be somebody else doing something else amazing, right? And so I think that when we get caught in that trap, and this can even begin caught in the trap of comparing yourself to where you think you should be or where you're supposed to be, instead of maybe turning it over to the universe and seeing like, oh no, this is where I am. And this is leading me on this other path. This is leading me in this other direction. And that's actually where I'm supposed to be. And supposed to, in that case, is like a good supposed to, but like meant to be. There we go. That's where I'm meant to be. And so I think if we are holding too tight to these comparisons, it plummets our self-worth. But it also means that we are not being the person that we are meant to be. And that is sad, right? Because we all need us to be our, like the world needs all of us to be like the youest version of yourself. I don't know. There's a doctor, I hesitate to quote Dr. Seuss anymore, but there was a great Dr. Seuss quote about like you being you and you're youer than you or something about that. And so I think that when we are constantly worrying on ourselves and fighting against ourselves, we can miss the wonderful version, the wonderful person that we are.
And to add to that, you know, I think Riley, you were saying early on too, that when you're so focused on comparing yourself to somebody else and what they're doing, what they've achieved, it is very much a distraction from you being on your own journey and discovering what your own zone of genius is, right? And putting that work in. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't know the amount of work that has gone into this 10 seconds that you're seeing.
Right.
And so if you're on your own journey and you're focused on that, you recognize that, okay, if I want to reach that point where I am excellent, that's going to take work, you know, and that's going to take work. That's going to take hours. That's going to take a certain level of discipline and commitment. Right. And so when you're on that journey, you know, I think a lot of people are quick to look outside for inspiration, you know, and I think I posted something about this like yesterday or 2 days ago, when really the inspiration that is most effective for you is you, because you know you have done stuff in the past, and I say you've done hard-ish, and you've done hard stuff in the past. We all, if you're breathing today, you've done a hard thing because you've gotten through a pandemic, right? You know, and so that is what you should be focused on, and looking within at some of the hard stuff you've overcome. You have overcome. If you're a mother, you're like, it doesn't even have to be like like I overcame cancer. Like even the most mundane things can be hard for a lot of people. And so the fact that you're waking up every day and getting through, that's some hard things. And so you really should be in the journey of discovering who you are and focusing and staying in your own lane. You don't, I mean, yes, outside inspiration and motivation is nice and it's lovely, and, you know, but the most effective is you, because you know you're capable of this next step because you just did one prior step, right? And so I think just when you're talking about just this general notion of comparing ourselves to others, it's important to acknowledge the amount of work that goes into that thing you so admire.
Yeah. And it's work, but it's also, you know, temperament, natural ability, personality, where, you know, where that person came from. Who knows what went in, what's going on behind the scenes? You have no idea. But like when we're talking about all of this happening, we want to leave you with an idea of, okay, well, so you've told me all of this. Now, what do I do? And in the research that I did before this episode, the biggest, and everyone's going to hate this answer, but too bad. The biggest, most common answer for how to deal with your urge to compare, and it is a natural human urge. We all do it. It's okay. You should not, I hope you don't feel ashamed, but we're not shaming anyone or judging you. And we all have done it. But the biggest, most common thing was to practice gratitude every single day. So what does that mean? And we're going to recap this because we've talked about it, I don't know how many times, Tova, but we've talked about it a lot. We'll talk about it again. But this was the common denominator in pretty much every article I read, every scientific journal I read, is the idea that if you can focus every single day on what you are grateful for in your own life about yourself that will help you overcome whatever it is you're comparing yourself to, whether it's to yourself or to other people. If you can, even write down 3 things you're grateful for and start out small. We've told you all this before. We'll tell you again, even if it's just, I'm grateful that I have this cup of coffee in 5 minutes with nobody asking me for anything right now. That's okay. That's gratitude. But let's try and do it every day, and let's try and write it down and put it out into the universe so that you are starting a practice of gratitude, not just a throwaway gratitude. And that will help you.
And I'll just add to that, and we've talked about gratitude before, but those moments of saying, I'm really grateful for this cup of coffee and nobody's bothering me, those can be stronger than like, I'm so grateful for my house, like, or I'm so grateful for the roof over. I mean, yes, we should all be grateful if we have a roof over our heads. That's but actually finding those little moments, because what it does is then you start looking for those moments.
Yes.
And then you start finding them throughout your day. Whereas if you're like, I'm grateful for my family, cool, that's great. I mean, hopefully that's the case for everybody. But if you're like, I'm grateful for this moment that I got to spend with my 8-year-old when his brothers were distracted and he and I got to have a special, like, whatever together. Like that's the kind of gratitude that helps you then find more things to embrace in your life.
Yeah. And if it helps motivate you to do this, several studies indicate that that adopting an attitude of gratitude increased positive affect, led to better sleep, led to higher levels of optimism, and led to more pro-social behavior. So there are actual studies out there that show it does actually work. You may not notice it working right away, but long-term, it will improve your life. Some other things to think about, and I actually really like this one, and I hadn't thought about it before doing the research, but I think it's a great one. If you are going to compare yourself to others, be intentional about who, how, and why. So if you're going to compare yourself, use it. Compare yourself to people who are similarly situated to you and who will actually help motivate you. So don't compare yourself to people who have literally nothing in common with you and you could not possibly have anything to do with. Don't compare yourself to a celebrity if you are not a celebrity. Don't compare yourself to somebody who looks and sounds nothing like you, that you could never attain whatever it is that they're doing because you don't have that skill set, right? If you want to become a motivational speaker and you are learning how to do that and you're in a course to learn how to do that, okay, watch Mel Robbins and figure out what she's doing and use that to help you become better on your path, not on her path, on your path, right? So be intentional about who, why, and how. Don't use it to burn yourself down or burn the other person down. Use it to lift yourself up along your own path. So those are my 2 favorite ones. And I think that those can actually be very useful in this process.
Yeah, I will just add a few more that we have down. We talked about this, set social media boundaries. I keep saying that over and over because I need to set social media boundaries. And so I'm telling all of you to hold myself accountable. But I think another one that I found really interesting is beware of your comparison triggers. So whether it's for you internally or externally, no matter what's happening, just be aware of the things that sort of set you up for doing this practice, these negative, I don't want to say negative feelings because feelings are feelings, but that set you up to sort of compare yourself either to yourself or to others. And I think that, being more self-aware about stuff like this does really help, because it does help you go, oh, I understand where that's coming from. I understand that feeling, and then it helps you feel that feeling and move past it. So those are some excellent ideas. I don't want this to end, but I do think we need to let everyone go so that you can get on with your lives. Hopefully somebody's like sitting in their car listening to this in the parking lot and like, yeah, can you guys end so I can go inside? So I think we just need to wrap up with our homework.
Yes, a bit of homework. Where are we? Sorry, I'm still scrolling through my notes. Sorry, everyone. Momentary pause. Somebody sing a jingle. And here we are. Okay, so we have 2 homework choices for you all this week, which is exciting. I don't think we've ever had 2 homework choices. I think we've just piled it on before. Anyway, all right, here you go. So first, think about what is harder. Oh no, sorry, I read that wrong. Tova, you confused me.
I think I wrote these late last night. Yeah,
That's all right. Think about what is harder for you right now. Is it comparing yourself to where you think you should be, or is it comparing yourself to others? All right. If you struggle with comparing yourself to yourself, grab your journal, keep track of what triggers you to compare yourself to yourself. I am struggling today.
I once again, very late night of writing this.
I need some commas in here.
Sorry.
The second option is if you struggle with comparing yourself to others, take a social media break. Step away from social media for a week. As we know, social media is a prime place where we compare ourselves to others. Give yourself a break. All right, we're going to post this with our show notes. So
and more commas, so it'll be easier for you to understand.
Yeah, so if you didn't catch that for some surprising reason, it will be posted online for you. So after all that, stop over on Instagram, or if you're taking a social media break, send a message on our website and let us know how it's going. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. Bunmi, thank you so much for joining us. We loved having you. We're probably going to rope you in next season to come join us again because you're such a joy to have on and you add so much to the conversation and we love you. So
thank you so much. Thank you. This was fun. This was a nice way to spend a dull Saturday afternoon. So this definitely made it brighter. Thank you for having us.
I'm so glad. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you all or talk to you all again next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.